After more than 50 hours with Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era, I'm no longer asking whether this game has potential. I'm asking a more useful question for you now: should you actually buy it? Because when I covered Olden Era recently, I was positive, but I still wasn't fully settled. It was starting to click, but it was still much closer to my first impressions. Now, after a lot of time across Classic mode, Single Hero, Arena and the campaign, I feel much more confident saying this now. Olden Era is the strongest new Heroes entry since Heroes 5. My name is Tom and this is LT Gaming, where me and my brother Luke cover all sorts of strategy games, RPGs, city builders. If you enjoy this sort of coverage, feel free to give the video a like, help us get out there on the algorithm. Subscribe if you think I've earned it, and consider supporting the channel as a member if you want to go that extra mile. Right, just to be clear, I'm not saying this game beats the pinnacle of the series that is Heroes 3. But honestly, that isn't really the question. The question for me is whether Olden Era can stand on its own, and whether the early access package is strong enough for you to pull that trigger on buying it. So let's get into it. Before we judge Olden Era, we need to address the elephant in the room, the obvious comparison: Heroes of Might and Magic 3. When I say Heroes 3, I don't just mean the base game from 1999. I mean the expansions, the community maps, the templates, the mods, the more than 25 years of players refining it into a fantasy strategy institution. So no, Olden Era is not better than Heroes 3, but I don't think that is the right question. The question is whether Olden Era can carve out its own lane. Can it understand why the older games of the series worked and why sometimes they didn't? Can it capture the familiar rhythm? And can it bring enough of its own ideas to justify it as a new entry? And that's what I wasn't fully sure about after the demo. I liked it, but I wasn't losing time to it. I wasn't getting the classic Heroes feeling where you sit down for 20 minutes, then you emerge from your cave 3 or 4 hours later. And after 50 hours with the early access build, I am getting that now. So no, this isn't Heroes 3.5, but I gotta say it is a genuinely strong new Heroes game and one that feels like it has its own future. So let's talk about how Olden Era actually plays. Honestly, it's much better than the demo suggested, which is the most familiar reference point for most of you right now. Back then, I could see the shape of a Heroes game, but I wasn't slipping fully into that familiar headspace. It looked right in places, but didn't quite have the pull for me. The early access build does. The big thing is that the familiar patterns start emerging. You understand which fights are worth taking, when to push, when to hold back, when to invest in your economy, when the game is baiting you into doing something stupid, heroic, or maybe a bit of both. And the difficulty curve is worth mentioning. On easy or normal, I think most players will learn the factions, enjoy the map flow, and make mistakes without being unduly punished. But on higher difficulties, especially impossible, the game starts asking you very sharp questions. You're gonna have to optimize properly, you'll need to manage your stacks, think about focus, use your abilities cleanly, and understand what your faction is trying to do. And that gives Olden Era a very nice spread. Newer players will get into the loop, while veteran players can start doing all the wonderfully cursed Heroes things, like for example farming focus with 1 stacks and feeling like a genius doing it. The faction design is where the depth has really started to grow on me. At first, in my last video, I didn't really connect with Schism or Necropolis. They felt awkward to me. I wasn't sure if they're going to be my sort of factions. Once I've cracked into how they work and how the units need to be used, they become 2 of my favourites, and that's a very good sign in a short span of time. I believe a strong strategy game shouldn't reveal everything immediately. There should be room to learn, experiment, fail horribly of course, which I've done my fair share of, and then make adjustments and suddenly realise the problem wasn't the faction, it was your strategy. Rude but useful. And this is probably what impressed me the most about Olden Era. There is a level of detail here I feel is missing from a lot of modern turn-based strategy games. And it feels like the devs Unfrozen have studied the older entries, taken lessons from what worked and what didn't, and then tried to refine the formula rather than just copying the surface of it. Not everything lands perfectly, but the core gameplay is strong, and I want to just keep playing it, which is a fantastic sign to me. So what does Olden Era get right? What is it doing well? The biggest thing for me is it feels like a proper Heroes game again. And this isn't just because it has towns, resources, creature stacks, all the things you expect in Heroes, but for me the whole loop starts to pull together. You make a plan, you spot the opportunity, you get greedy, you push a little further, and suddenly one more turn has become another few hours of your evening. That's never happened to me before with the demo, but it does now. Classic mode for me is the clear highlight. It's where the map flow, economy, faction growth, random maps, all of it comes together at its best. For long-term replayability, I think this mode matters most, and it's the reason that's kept me coming back to playing the early access. I also think faction design is a real strength. I wasn't so sure on this in my last video, but I have more time to unpack them now. Some factions are immediately easy to understand, like Temple, while others has required more work on my part, and I think that's exactly how it should be. I highlighted before, Schism and Necropolis didn't really click for me at first, but once I started to unpack their units and synergies, these two have become my favourites now. I love snowballing my skeleton stack with Necropolis, and that is really gripping me. So there is more depth here than just surface level variety. The combat has grown on me over time also. Between spells, focus, unit ability, stack management, and faction identity, there is enough to reward you for proper learning. On lower difficulties, you can enjoy the flow. On higher difficulties, the game starts to bite and challenge you. And that is fantastic for me, particularly with the Heroes title. And for the early access, the amount of content is very strong. Classic single hero arena campaigns, scenarios, random maps, templates. It's not even the 1.0 package yet. It doesn't feel bare bones at all, which is always a problem when it comes to EA. There's a lot to play, test, learn, and get invested with. So this is why my view is so strong. After the demo, I thought it had promise. After 50 hours, I think this is one of the strongest entries in a very long time. Now, what is the game not doing so well? What are the caveats here? The biggest one for me is presentation. Now, I don't think Olden Era looks bad, but I do think some people are going to bounce off the visual style. It obviously has more of modern fidelity than the older games, but some of the instant character and distinctiveness has been lost, no doubt. And in Heroes that does matter. The older games had this strong visual language where towns, units, heroes, map objects were immediately memorable. Some of the things here do blend together more than I would like. The UI is part of this problem as well. The town screens and hero screens are functional, but they feel a bit drab. I also don't love the current overview setup for towns and units, and the heroes as well. The information is there, but I want it to stand out, I want it to pop to me. I want to look at my hero and know exactly what he's good at, what he's bad at. Some of the readability can be uneven too. Hive is the clearest example of this for me. I like the concept, I like the aggressive identity, kind of like Inferno a bit, but some of the units blur together visually and it makes the faction harder to connect with. Sometimes I don't know which unit is which and I kind of don't feel the connection to them. I think balance also does need addressing. It's not shocking for early access for the game to be a little bit unbalanced, but some factions and strategies do feel overtuned. My stack of around 1,000 skeleton archers basically deleted everything in front of it, which is funny, but it's also clearly the sort of thing that probably needs a bit of balance over time. Now, to be completely fair, classic Heroes games have always had a bit of balance problems. Native Heroes 3 is not exactly a perfectly tuned Swiss watch either, but modern titles do require a bit more attention to this, and so balance will matter over time. And to be on the really nitty-gritty side here, I think some maps do rely a bit too much on objects where it's fight this and get resources, for example. They're useful, but when there are absolutely dozens of them, they do start to lose their uniqueness. I want more strange buildings, more memorable risks, more moments that make exploration feel properly varied. So, should you buy Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era? For me, it's a yes, and here's why. This one is a buy for me because I think it's one of the strongest entries the Heroes series has had for years. I also put it among one of the most interesting turn-based strategy releases we've had in some time, because it has that rare thing that I'm always looking for in this genre, depth that actually rewards your time. But it does come with the obvious early access caveat. If you want a fully polished, fully balanced, content-rich, then waiting is perfectly sensible on this one. There are some rough edges and some of them are not tiny, I'll be honest. Presentation needs a bit of sharpening, balance needs some work, and I do want to see the campaign and scenario, custom scenario that is, expanded further. So if you're comfortable with early access, I think there's enough here to recommend it. That's the key distinction for me. It doesn't feel like I'm buying into an idea or a promise. I'm already going to buy into a strong game that still needs a bit of refinement on the back end. For existing Heroes fans, we are a tough bunch, but I think it's one of the easiest recommendations I can make. Not because it replaces Heroes 3. I want to be adamant on that, but I think it's finally a new entry that understands the series well enough to build forward. For turn-based strategy fans more broadly, this is worth a serious look. It has enough accessibility for you to learn on lower difficulties, but enough bite on the high end to reward proper optimization. So my verdict is simple. Buy it if you love heroes, you enjoy turn-based strategy, and you're comfortable with early access. So LT gamers, this is where I land on Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era. It's a strong early access release, a confident return for the series, and the first new Heroes game in a long time that I genuinely want to keep on playing. Now I'm curious to hear from you lot. Where do you land on it? Are you going to buy Olden Era straight away, wait for more updates and polished, or are you still chained to Heroes 3 with a mod folder, which is a perfectly reasonable stance as well? Let me know down in the comments. If you found the video useful, give us a like. Thanks to the members on screen for your support, and cheers for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.